Welcome back, adventurers. This week we shatter some myths about fixed keels and shallow draft catamarans. We share our years of experience of these cats as we take a deep dive into the pros and cons of each of them. We also share the real truth of our choice of shallow draft cats, and it's probably not what you expect. Come with us as we open a can of worms on this topic. Find out what lots of people don't know and how your cruising pleasure and lifestyle can be dramatically improved, and how this can be a game changer for your sailing life. So kick off your shoes and come barefoot with us. We are John and Ali, the Barefoot Doctors, sailing and travelling around the globe. Join us as we share the adventure and explore the beauty of the world. Because life is better barefoot. Well, hi folks, welcome back to another edition of Expedition Barefoot, and today we're going to be having a discussion about fixed keels and shallow draft boats. There's so many people out there now really interested in aluminium boats, and there's a few of us building them now. There's us, there's Delos, there's a couple of secret ones we can't mention.
Nahoa, sailing into freedom.
There are a few of us out there now, so that's really cool. But the thing is, we've had a lot of people ask questions about what's the difference, and that we think we're in a position that we can actually make a judgment and make a call on this because we've had both.
The important thing here is what we're talking about is what is the difference and the advantages and disadvantages of a fixed keel catamaran compared to a catamaran that has shallow draft and you can lift the keels and the rudders up and go into shallow water. Now, Delos 2.0 have obviously chosen the fixed keels, and they've explained very well that they want it simple and they want it strong and they don't want to have any fuss. Nahoa in their initial plans also had fixed keels. I think they're thinking about that a bit more. And Peter from Sailing into Freedom has a Mumby design which is now being made by Odisea. So they have both lifting daggerboards and lifting rudders so they can beach the boat. And Portofino as well has not a daggerboard, but it has a rotating centerboard which allows it to lift up completely and go into the base of the hull, and the rudder also kicks up so it can sit on the beach without getting the rudder into the sand.
Like every boat, it's a choice and a compromise, so there's no wrong answer here. It's just what suits your cruising lifestyle. What
Elizabeth was saying earlier is we've had both. We have had the fixed keel catamaran with the Leopard 50 and the Leopard 45, and we've had Alberdash, which was the Pescott 42-foot performance cat where we could sit it on the beach and its draft was only 2 foot. Now, having had that experience and having lived in areas where there are big tides and having the advantage of being able to take the boat up creeks and into mangroves or onto beaches is absolutely phenomenal. With that experience under our belts, we would never ever go back to a catamaran that has fixed keels and consequently the same draft as your normal monohulls.
I was just about to say, it's just incredible to think that the boat can actually sit down on flat sand, and it's flat and with no water underneath it, and it's just amazing. And you know what they say?
What?
Once you go flat, you never go back.
What I would point out though is the fixed keel boats can sit on their keels as well. You know, they have to be in 4.5 or 5 foot of water in order to sit in the sand. The important thing here is we're talking about comparing fixed keel boats with shallow draft boats. Now, there are multiple performance cats out there that have daggerboards that lift up, but unfortunately the vast majority of them all have fixed rudders which are still 4.5 foot deep or that sort of depth, so they cannot go into shallow water either, and you cannot beach them at all. In fact, if you do get grounded and the boat weight goes down onto their rudders, you're in serious trouble.
You know, what's all the fuss about? Like, if they don't know what they're missing, then they don't really know what the fuss is about. So you want to share just...
Yeah, and this is very much like the front cockpits. A lot of people sit and say, oh, I don't need a front cockpit. Once you've had a front cockpit, again, you don't want to go back because there are so many advantages of that. That's another whole subject which we have talked about before.
And I'll have to think of a rhyme to match front cockpit.
But once you've had a shallow draft boat that you can beach, you just will be amazed at the advantages you have. When we were in our 50-foot leopard, and I loved it, but it was a fixed draft of about 4.5, 4 foot 7 or 8. We felt like our throats were cut because we couldn't go up into those really shallow bits of water out of the way of storms, and we couldn't go right up to the beach. On a shallow draft boat, you can drive the boat up onto the beach and step off the bow onto dry sand.
It's just amazing.
And I mean, that's just a minor, frivolous bit of nonsense.
I'm so passionate about this that I could just go off on a whole tangent.
And she does, all the time.
So I'm going to flick it back over to you. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I was going to go through this in a logical sequence of benefits and disadvantages.
So logical. I just go.
You do, but also to give a little bit of background story. So when we started looking at aluminium catamarans after our Leopard 50 burned 4 years ago, there was only Garcia's making fixed keel cats, and there was Mumby Designs out there, but you had to get
aluminium.
Aluminium boats. And at that stage, there weren't any others, and certainly nobody had all those things that we had on our wish list. And Garcia didn't want to make lifting keels for their cats, even though they do for their monos. So we really didn't have anybody who could build or was building a boat with all those features that we wanted until we came across Portofino. Rafael at Portofino then said, like, I'm already started building a fixed keel catamaran with these other amazing features which we hadn't actually thought of, which was great. But then he said he'd incorporate those features that we wanted into that catamaran, and we redesigned the whole boat from the go. So the point is that we've actually been in this process of designing what we consider an ultimate boat for ourselves for more than 3 years now. Since that time, obviously, a lot of other designers and a lot of other boat builders are starting to build aluminium boats. The reason the discussion is about shallow draft versus fixed keels is that you don't have shallow draft unless you have a rudder that also lifts up, which is why almost every performance cat out on the market cannot sit on the beach because they don't have allowance for that in their design. The Seawind 1600 is the only performance cat that does actually have a lifting rudder, and it can sit on the sand. So we did look at that boat very seriously in the past.
Fixed keels generally have about a draft of about 4.5 feet, yeah? Which is
usually
kind of the same sort of as monohulls, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what's another advantage in that I already know the answer, by the way, guys. But it's a lead on for him.
The advantage for having a shallow draft, guys, and this is the top of our list for reasons to go shallow draft, lifting keel, lifting rudder, etc., is that you can get your boat away from storms and into safety. You can drive it, motor it up creeks, into mangroves, over coral atolls, into sandy lagoons, onto the beach, behind sandy spits, and be out of the storm. There are so many times we have taken refuge because of the shallow draft has allowed us to put the boat up in mangroves. For example, Cyclone Debbie, Category 5 cyclone, annihilated a lot of North Queensland when it came through a few years ago. I drove Alberdash into the mangroves, tied it up at a fairly high water mark in the mangroves, and it just sat there, absolutely no damage, even though the cyclone blew for about 3 days. It was absolutely awful.
And it had just been freshly painted.
20,000.
It was safe and sound.
Yeah. There's been many other times too, like we'll be able to go up rivers or creeks, and also you can sit through a storm at the high point of the tide, so 8 or 9 hours you can be out of the water sitting on the sand. More than half the time you can be not having any threat of dragging because you're sitting on the sand high and dry.
It is amazing. And we've been in situations where we've been high and dry purposely, and we've looked out at everybody else in the storm doing these ones, you know, and just having such a hard time. And we've been out there doing these ones ourselves, so we know what it's like. We know
what it's like. We had one Easter, we spent 4 days sitting out, you know, 30-knot winds, but it was bliss because we were behind a hill in a sandy atoll, but it was absolutely wonderful and calm.
Yes. In
the flat water and on the sand.
It's kind of taking the things that you don't like about sailing when there's storms and bad weather, and it's kind of addressing those with really good fundamental solutions. That's what I like. There
are many places with creeks where you can go up creeks if you've got shallow draft, and it's completely unavailable to people with keels of, you know, 4 or 5 feet. This is by far the most important feature of safety and pleasurability that shallow draft gives you.
Actually, one of our favourite places in the whole world is a place called Hill Inlet. Don't tell anyone, because we don't want the secret to get out. It's in Australia. It's near Whitehaven Beach, and you can only have a shallow draft boat to go up, or little motorboats, you know, day trippers. You've got to actually snake around following the deepest part of the channel possible, and because we had a shallow draft of like 2 foot or whatever it was, we managed to get up and behind and sitting down in the whitest, softest sand. It's silica, just beautiful.
Yeah.
And no one could touch us.
Yeah, 360 degrees protection from wind and waves, flat water all the time, protected by mountains from the prevailing wind. Absolutely glorious.
And we've held out in storms there as well.
Yeah, and lightning.
Yeah.
What about the amount of flatter water you can anchor in because you got shallow draft on it?
Oh yeah, actually.
Because you are the one that doesn't like.
I actually really like this part of it is when you've got a shallow draft, you can, even if you can't beach it, you can go right in close to the beach, tucked in away from the main swell, and you know, you can just get out of that big lopping swell. It's really quite remarkable. So I love that as well, and I miss that. So we'll be able to do that on the Portofino.
Another benefit that we've actually experienced quite significantly is in a shallow draft boat, when the anchorage is completely full of boats and there's no space to anchor, you can actually drive your shallow boat up straight past all the other boats, go within, you know, 10 or 20 meters of the shoreline in about 3 or 4 foot of water where none of the other boats can go, and drop your anchor, and you're completely alone and with lots of space to swing, whereas all these other guys are all jam-packed close. And well, a good place where this sort of thing would be a huge benefit is Italy. Where the people just drop their anchor and there's a boat every 10 meters. It's absolutely scary.
Yeah, you should see the look on people's face when we've done it in our Alberdash. You know, it's kind of like, excuse me, coming through, excuse me. And you feel like you've got like a lucky ticket or something like that, because you can get right up close and, you know, right up, and you know, you can feel people going, what are they doing? You know? How come they can go up there? It's really super cool.
And it's just so nice and peaceful and makes the anchoring so much better. The anchoring experience is hugely improved. So this is all about quality of life.
I have heard it said that daggerboards are a waste of time and they're hopeless anyway, and you know, you don't need them anyway, and all that sort of thing. So I think it would be really good to tell the folks out there what you know about daggerboards through your experience with having daggerboards all those years ago.
So one of the things that very few people seem to know or realize is that when you've got daggerboards in really rough weather, and if there's ever any risk of capsize, what you should be doing is lifting the leeward or the downwind daggerboard. So if at any time your boat starts to lift the windward hull, there's no resistance to sideways slip, because now both your daggerboards are out of the water, or starting to go out the water. The force of the wind will slide you sideways instead of tipping you over. If you've got fixed keels, you can't lift them up. So as you get hit by a gust, the tendency will push you over, and the fixed keel or the daggerboard that is down will trip the boat over, and that will increase your chance of capsize. So when you're sailing in really rough weather, guys, and for all of you people, especially with the light performance cats, lift your leeward or the downwind daggerboard out of the water completely. You don't need it if you're sailing a beam reach at all. So that will be a huge benefit and a much better safety aspect as well. Now on the Portofino 52, I have no reason to think we'll ever get close to capsize, because it's a medium weight boat. Even though it's got performance hulls, we'll sail very fast, but it's a lot more weight to pull out the water. So that's a trick. Lift that leeward daggerboard and you'll be much safer.
In actual fact, what everybody does say about daggerboards is that you have much better performance when you're sailing upwind. Is that correct?
That is correct. And you notice this is the absolute last point that we have, because this is the least important to us. Even though we will take advantage of it with the daggerboards when we're sailing upwind, you don't sail upwind all that often, but having that extra performance upwind is a bonus. But this is the least important aspect for me, and probably for you, because we try not to sail upwind at all anyway. But when we do, obviously a daggerboard will sail upwind better. Performance is not the main reason that we want lifting keels. It is for those other safety and comfort aspects. So what about the disadvantages of lifting keels and shallow draft?
So the first thing that springs to mind is the fact that it's very complicated to build.
Well, it's certainly more complicated, and daggerboards are relatively simple compared to a rotating centerboard, and there's a price attached to that extra complexity. So if you just weld on fixed keels, whacky-do, they're done, they're finished, and there's no difficult engineering needed. If you do daggerboards, you obviously have to make sure the daggerboards are welded straight, you have to make sure the daggerboards themselves are the right shape and can slide up and down. Then with a rotating centerboard, you have all the mechanics to drive that board up and down, which again is an added layer of complexity. That added layer of complexity obviously is a problem for the boat builder. You have to make your decisions about what complexity you're willing to have on the boat and what the benefits are that you're going to get from that complexity. And the one other disadvantage of daggerboards is obviously if you hit the ground, something's going to break. So they're usually designed with sacrificial bottom keels. So the bottom foot or foot and a half is sacrificial, so it just breaks off if you hit the bottom. And so the aluminium doesn't rotate backwards and damage your hull.
Because the other thing that could happen if you hit something even worse, instead of it just breaking off, it can ram the daggerboard up inside the hull.
Yeah, so with any daggerboard, if you hit something and there is no sacrificial bottom, the daggerboard will rotate up and the back edge of the daggerboard will dig into the hull and potentially damage the hull or certainly damage the daggerboard. Obviously, if you hit something very big like sail over the top of a container or hit a whale or something like that, it's probably going to hit more than just the sacrificial tip. And that is why on the Portofino 52 we have a compression plate that will just give way and the whole daggerboard will come up and you won't have any damage to it at all, no matter how high up the keel you get hit. So that to us is a huge safety benefit of the Portofino 52. But again, we are choosing to have that extra complexity in order to overcome one of the disadvantages of hitting something with the keels down. The other interesting thing that I've heard is that people say sailing with daggerboards or lifting keels adds a layer of complexity to the actual sailing. Having sailed 20 years with alberdash and daggerboards, it is really, really simple. You can have the daggerboards up almost all of the time. The only time you need them down is when you're going upwind. When we're on a beam reach, I would usually only have maybe 1 or 2 foot of one daggerboard down, because boats with thin hulls will track through the water fine. They don't need the daggerboard for directional stability. I found it makes very little difference to the leeway.
Maybe people say that because they don't really understand and they think they're more complicated than what they are and they don't really understand the whole concept.
Yeah, so in simple terms, keep the daggerboards up all the time, except if you're going upwind, in which case you have them down. So it is really, really simple. The one thing you have to remember is if you are going to beach the boat, you've got to lift them up. You can't leave them down, otherwise. And if you're sailing into shallow harbours or into marinas, you've got to know what the depth is, because you do want the daggerboards to be down a certain amount to stop you being blown sideways, but you don't want to hit the bottom because that's just a touch embarrassing. For those people that think they're complicated to use, I don't believe they are. They're very simple indeed.
The other thing that can be put in the disadvantage category, I guess, is when you have a daggerboard, the daggerboard case has got to come down inside the hull. So that takes up room. Over to you.
Yeah, and obviously with a fixed keel, you've actually got an open space that is used for storage or for water or diesel. And the argument is that the daggerboard going vertically up through the hull actually takes up space that would otherwise be used for something else. When you've been sailing on cats for many years, you realize that you will never ever fill up all the space inside your cat, and if you do, you're gonna the cat is going to be so heavy that you're going to sail like an yeah, like one of them. So the little bit of space that is lost from the daggerboard going up through the hull is of no consequence in reality. But in fact, on the Portofino 52, our centerboard lifts up and sits underneath the floor of the hull. So we don't lose any hull space at all. So it does actually add strength as well, but it takes up no space in the hulls. Yeah, I think this argument is probably more likely from somebody that doesn't realize that there's so much space on cats, you can never fill up all the space that you have because you would just weigh too much.
Oh yeah, you can fill it up, but
you can fill it up,
but that's the call you make. If you fill it up, it is going to sound like To conclude that particular part,
yep, it does take up space, but you're very unlikely to ever need to use that space because you've got so much other space available to you in your catamaran.
Especially if you've come from a monohull.
But congratulations, you made it!
You've crossed over! Come with us! Well, we haven't finished with the whole beachability yet because this is a huge topic in itself, and I'd really like to cover it further because there's so many advantages, but that can wait for another time, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Because obviously shallow draft boats and fixed keel boats can both beach fine, and all the advantages are going to be available to both designs.
So of course we could have just opened up a whole can of worms here, because what could happen?
Well, instead of us arguing about monohulls versus catamarans, we'll be arguing about fixed keels versus shallow draft. Maybe that's going to be the next big debate for the future. But at the end of the day, it's a personal choice. Peter from Sailing into Freedom is making a big argument about who's right and who's wrong and who's this and who's that and who's doing first and who's getting points and who's the winner. We're all winners. It's all personal choice. We make our choices based on our preferences, and then we have to live with them.
He knows that too.
Yeah, he does. He's just
playing
the game.
He's just playing. Anyway, check his channel out if you haven't already.
And of course, Delos, but everybody knows Delos.
They're great channels, great entertaining, lots of valuable information, and yeah, they're good to watch.
And we're also looking very much forward to Ben and Ashley when they start building their Nahoa 55. So yeah, we met up with them in Cape Town and had a wonderful time sharing ideas and knowledge.
And trouble is, because everyone's cruising and everyone's, you know, on a mission to get somewhere else, you never get to spend long enough with these really cool people that you want to hang out with. You know, kindred spirits. But anyway, that's just life.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say is, if you have a comment about anything we've discussed here, whether it's unfounded or whether it's you've got really something to say, then put it in the comments, because we're always really interested to read, and we read every single one. We really value your comments, guys.
Yeah, so please comment about whether you think what we're saying is correct or not. Like, what do you think about the advantages and disadvantages of fixed keels and shallow draft boats?
And even what you'd have if you had a choice. What would you go for?
Yeah, let's have a vote.
Yeah, we'd be really interested to hear. Mango, what are you going to go for?
Garth,
what are you going to go for, guys? Carleen, what are you going to go for? So put your comments below, because we do really value them. I know we say click and subscribe and all that kind of thing, but if you've got someone that you know is looking for a boat or thinking about building a boat or anything like that, just send them the link and share the link, because it's all knowledge that's going out there and it helps the community hugely.
and just remember, guys, we are all on the same team, so long live aluminium. May we be king of the seas! Yeah!
I love it when he goes off. Long live aluminium, because it will live for a long time, and it's recyclable, so
Exactly.
it could be a 10th boat down the road. But
Yeah.
anyway,
And hundreds of thousands of Coke cans.
yeah. But it's a very exciting journey, guys, and we're really excited that you're all coming along with us, because this is breaking new ground, and a lot of the stuff that we're learning for the first time. We're just combining all our information about sailing and trying to produce the best ultimate aluminium catamaran for us.
For us. Not for those other people. For us. We have learned so much from you guys, giving us advice along the way.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it enormously. So thanks very much for that, and we'll see you next week. All the best, guys.
Bye from us.
Also, thanks to our awesome Patreons for helping us help others in need. Until next week, guys, hold fast to your dreams, for like the wind in the sails, they propel you towards endless possibilities.
Oh, we've decided to change the topic.
Because yeah.
They suggested it, not me.
They're gonna go.
All right. We'll go back to your topic.